Thank you, 67 Naga. Your support is much appreciated. Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the Burning Dagger Cinderstrike build. And the way this one's going to work is we're going to be using Cinderstrike as our main damaging skill, and every time that we get a hit with Cinderstrike, it's going to spawn a Burning Dagger, which will circle around us for 1 second and then take off at the nearest enemy. So basically we're getting 2 hits for every hit we do. And this isn't going to be super gear dependent. The way you're going to increase the damage of the Burning Dagger is one, yes, you can on your rings put added fire throwing damage, but inside of Cinderstrike we're going to build into oil coatings. And with oil coatings you can have an unlimited number of stacks. So the way oil coating works is every time you hit an enemy with Cinderstrike, you will get a stack or a buff of oil coating, and this will increase your fire damage. Now it'll also increase your dodge with the way we have it in fire resist, but for the basic part of it you want the fire damage per stack. The other thing we're going to build into is the coated darts, which is behind oil coatings, which gives us up to 5 throwing fire damage for every stack of oil coating we have. And you can get 10 to 15 stacks at oil coating whenever you're in battle constantly attacking, which is going to give you between 50 and 75 flat fire damage for throwing attacks, which is huge. That's a huge amount of throwing fire damage for attacks. And then when you match that up with your 10 to 15 stacks of oil coating also giving you 20% fire damage per stack, not only are you getting a huge base of throwing fire damage, but you're also getting a huge increased percentage of fire damage. And that's all inside of the skill tree, which means just leveling the skill up itself is what's going to be really able to give you all of the damage. Now yes, gear is going to help, but this isn't gear dependent. It's really just based off this skill. All of our other skills will just kind of be buffing us in utilities like shift, dark quiver, smoke bomb, and shurikens for armor. And while this build is not going to be one of the highest DPS builds ever, it's not a Z DPS. It does actually do some decent damage. A lot of people have just been asking for a Cinderstrike build, so this is my version of it, of how I would play it if I were to build around it. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the skills and the interactions and how they work. For skills, I have Dark Quiver, Shift, Smoke Bomb, Cinderstrike with +2 levels, and Shurikens. For Dark Quiver, we have a little bit of offense and then mostly defense in this skill. So we have 3 points in Surge of Adrenaline so that we get 20% more attack speed for 3 seconds. And then we have 3 points in Nature's Focus so that we get 90% increased elemental damage when we pick up an arrow. And then for the defense side of things, we have several things going on. One, when we pick up an arrow, we get 5 stacks of Dust Shroud for 4 seconds, and this can stack. But each stack is going to give you 50 dodge rating and 5% GB, which means you get 25% of your glancing blow and 250 flat dodge rating for just picking up a Dark Quiver arrow every 4 seconds. And that can stack to where you can get to 100% GB, and you can have 1,000 flat dodge just from picking up arrows. And then the other defensive side is you're going to have slow duration on nearby enemies when you pick up a black arrow, as well as knockback, which is going to be incredibly useful because you'll notice that a lot of mobs like to come into melee range and kind of pounce on you, and being able to just pick up a black arrow real quick and knock them fully back is really nice. And 4 meters is a pretty decent amount of distance for that to happen. Then for shift, we got 5 points in sleight of hand, so that we'll throw 5 shurikens when we shift. Those shurikens are going to give us armor thanks to the skill tree. We have 4 points in jade quivers, so that we'll get 4 jade arrows when we shift, and when we use these we'll get 60% increased critical strike chance, as well as some poison chance, but we're not really building around that. We also have 1 point in shadow slip to make sure we're invulnerable while shifting. Then we have the normal mana and haste, and then 2 points in velocity will give us 50% increased damage with our next non-channeled skill after shifting, which will be Cinderstrike. For Smoke Bomb, we're using this again for defense and for offense. So on the defense side of things, we're going to be getting more Dust Shrouds. So you get 5 stacks of Dust Shrouds every time that you pick up a Dark Quiver arrow, a black arrow. But here you'll get a stack every half second just for being inside of smoke bomb, which is one of the reasons why your defense is kind of lacking until you get into the fight, is because all of your dodge and all of your glancing blow and your armor, all of that happens once you actually start using your skills. And then on the left side, we went for a few things. One, we increased the duration. Two, we wanted more points in Shadow Hunter for that base crit chance with bow attacks. So while you are inside of Smoke Bomb, not only are you going to have incredible critical strike chance with your bow attacks, but with 5 points in Smoke Blades, you're also going to get 50% more throwing attack damage every second for 4 seconds, which can stack. So you can get up to 200% increased throwing attack damage just for standing in Smoke Bomb for 4 seconds, which is pretty huge. Then for Cinderstrike, our main damaging skill, we have 22 points in this, and it still wasn't enough. It would take about 30 points into this skill to actually get as much as I really wanted to do with it. Now, we kind of have it hybrid setup. We wanted to do great damage with it because it offers a lot of added fire damage. You can get fire damage in Inferno, you can get added fire damage in Incinerate, you can get more damage and increased area with Blast Wave, and then you can really build into the first attack getting a high critical strike multiplier. You can get up to 150% critical strike multiplier. But the problem is when I built it just that way, that only the third strike was really doing damage, which meant the other 2 attacks weren't really doing anything, and it just wasn't really enough DPS output. So what we did is we started building into the Burning Dagger, and the way Burning Dagger works is every time that you get a hit with Cinderstrike, you get a Burning Dagger, and this dagger will consume 8 of your mana, and it will circle you for 1 second and then launch itself at the nearest enemy, and it has the tags of throwing damage and fire damage. And it will ignite the enemy on use, or whenever it hits the enemy, so you have a 100% chance to ignite with it as well. Now, basically, when you have this skill going off, it doesn't do a lot of damage unless you build into throwing damage. If you're spec'd into bow damage and fire bow damage, other than the fire damage, you're not going to get a lot of damage out of Burning Dagger. So the workaround for that was getting into the 5 points of Coated Darts, and this gives you 5 added throwing fire damage, which is global. It doesn't only work for this, you can do it with other throwing attacks, however it works best with the Burning Dagger. And what happens is you get oil coating. Oil coating is something that you get every time that you hit an enemy with Cinderstrike. It's a buff, you'll get an icon for it. It lasts for 4 seconds and it can stack. For every stack of oil coating that you have, you get 20% more fire damage, which is going to help both the fire Burning Dagger and it's going to help your fire tagged Cinderstrike. So it's going to do damages with both sides. And then you get 5 points in the Coated Darts that you get all that throwing damage. Now, in combat, when you're attacking, and this is why we built as much attack speed as possible, you can get between 10 and 15 stacks of this at all times. And what's nice about that means you're getting between 200 and 300% fire damage, and you're getting between 50 and 75 throwing added fire damage. And for the Burning Dagger, that's a lot of damage, especially when you throw on the unique Relaka's gloves, or claws. And what that allows for is it gives you up to 120% throwing critical strike multiplier. The Burning Dagger actually started to do just as much damage as our first strike. Not quite as much, but the thing is that you could still get the first strike damage, and with your other 2 strikes you could get 3 Burning Daggers. And with the passive points to generate 8 mana on a 0 mana costing skill, you can counteract that 8 mana gain with every attack you do, so you actually don't lose any mana using this skill. So we have it set up so that every attack we do is going to do a Burning Dagger. The Burning Dagger is going to do more damage per stack of oil coating that you have, and then we still built into some of the first attack base fire damage, we built into the critical strike vulnerability, and then of course we have that 90% critical multiplier for the first strike as well. So you're going to get really good damage with the first strike, and then you're going to get good damage with the Burning Dagger from all strikes. For Shurikens, we have this set up to give us some extra armor. It does do a little bit of physical shred for us, but that's not going to be the main reason we have it. We built down here all the way in the bottom right. You get the 1 point in Blade Shield, so the Shurikens will now be cast around you. They'll spin in a nice circle around you. 3 points in Bladed Armor is going to let you get 150% increased armor, and that's because we get 30% per Shuriken, and when we shift we can have 5 of these spinning around us. And with 4 points in Floating Blades, we get an increased duration on them, and that's going to give us a total of just about 5 seconds. So you just have to make sure that you shift about once every 5 seconds in order to keep these up and keep that armor buff. Also, make sure you put 4 points in Ethereal Blades, as you will need the Pierce chance, otherwise as soon as they hit something they'll disappear, and then you no longer get the armor buff. And with 4 points in Abrasive Arsenal, you get 200% physical resistance shred chance. We do a little bit of physical damage with Cinderstrike hits. However, it's not a huge deal. If you want to place these elsewhere, you can, but there wasn't really anywhere that was more beneficial than where they are here. For passives, I have 31 points in the Rogue base class, with 8 points in Swift Assassin, 1 point in Guile, 5 points in Evasion, 5 points in Agility, 4 points in Sapping Strikes, and this is very important because that 8 mana gain is going to counteract the 8 mana consumed by a Burning Dagger being summoned. And then 8 points in Critical Precision to increase your critical strike chance. We have 0 points in the Blade Dancer and 81 points in the Marksman, our master class, with 8 points in Draining Arrows, 8 points in Focus Fire, 5 points in Assassin's Quiver, 10 points in Wound Maker, 5 points in Heightened Senses, which is really nice. For one, the bow critical strike multiplier, but the critical strike avoidance as well. 4 points in Concentration, 10 points in Missile Mastery, 8 points in Elemental Arrows, 3 points in Siege Quiver, and the idea behind the Elemental Arrows was that as you move, since we are kind of a kiting build, we'd get more fire damage with our Cinderstrike bow attacks. However, since that's not really the main focus of our damage, we do have, the throwing attack as well. You can respec these points and put them elsewhere if you'd like. 6 points in Arrow Storm, 1 point in Barrage of Pain, and 5 points in Perfect Aim. For items and idols, 2 types of idols that we're wearing. You want increased aerial with Cinderstrike's first attack and % increased throwing damage. The throwing damage is probably going to do you better than the increased aerial with Cinderstrikes if you're looking for damage, but the increased aerial with Cinderstrike is also nice for your AoE clear. And then we also have increased critical strike chance and bow damage with a 1x4 on the side. It's really your choice of anything you want to fit in this 1x4 section. You can do health idols, resistance if you're missing some, anything that you want. We are wearing one unique, the Laraka's Claws, and this allows you to get up to 120% throwing critical strike multiplier, which is huge for the throwing attacks, especially for the burning daggers. The chance to poison on throwing hit, while will lead to a little bit of extra damage, isn't really anything major. And then the +2 projectiles with Shurikens, since we're not actually manually casting it, it doesn't have any effect for us. And then I'm just going to hover over all of my items really quick. If you'd like to see them, you can pause the video, or in the description there will again be a link to the written form, which will have the build planner, in which you can open that up and see all of these and mess around with them and do whatever you like to them. Our +2 Cinderstrike is on the Relic. And then for our character sheet, as you can see, we're not capped on resistances. We have quite a bit, but we're not capped. We're lacking a little bit in poison and in void. We have 16% armor just standing here in place. However, that will go up as you do Shuriken. So like if I shift, you'll notice we jump right up to 1200 armor, which is a very huge amount. Our dodge is going to fly upwards as we tend to get more stacks of the Dust Shrouds. So when you're active and you have, both your arrows going and stuff, you'll see our dodge actually goes up quite a bit. You can get close to 40 to 50% pretty easily. And then if you'd also like, you can put more dodge on the gear, but I went for resistances instead. But you can definitely, especially with shifting, and if you put in additional dodge per point of dex, you can jump up to the 80% no problem. But here we don't have a super high amount until we're actually in battle moving around. And then for damages, we have quite a bit of damages. We have that 260% critical strike multiplier, which for throwing attacks is 100% higher. And then for damages, our throwing attack damage is just over 400%, and our fire damage is almost at 400%, which is some really nice damage. And again, when you're in like Smoke Bomb, you can see that throwing attack damage just starts to skyrocket. We get to almost 650% throwing attack damage, which is why Burning Dagger does such great damage for us. And then how I play the build, I like to put Dark Quiver and Smoke Bomb both on autocast. And then I like to shift around whenever I need to, but I try to do it every few seconds just so that you'll have those Shurikens for the armor, because that armor reduction is going to be really nice. And then all you're going to do is, of course, just fire your good old Cinderstrike, and as you can see, we're not hitting for bad damage. Your first strike is going to hit or crit for about 10k damage. Your second and third strike will hit for about 5k damage, or about half of what the first strike does. And then you can see our burning daggers are shooting off into every direction. Now they do target the nearest enemy, they don't just fire off in a random direction. The training dummy, however, doesn't count as an enemy, so right now they're just kind of going wherever the hell they want to go. But in battle they will actually go towards enemies, so they're a lot more accurate, you could say. And there's quite a few of them, and if you actually get one of these to hit the training dummy, maybe, you'll notice that they do, there we go, there was a 3 to 4k crit right there. Now I didn't have any stacks of my oil coating up because I stopped attacking to get that, but you should crit for about the same damage as your first strike does with every single crit that you get out of the burning daggers. So they'll hit anywhere from 5 to 10k on the training dummy once you actually get them to hit it. And against enemies, like I said, they're going to hit just as much as that first strike does. So it more than doubled the total DPS output of the build by putting in those burning daggers, which really helped. Alright, let's go ahead and jump into some more gameplay. And travelers, remember, stay safe.